Hello once again. You just quieten down a little bit, because I'm sure, like me, you've been looking forward to this moment, the first evening of the Rouleur Classic. It's the launch of this book, Icons by Bradley Wiggins. He's an icon himself, he needs no introduction, so Brad, please just come onto the stage.
Thank you very much. All right, mate. All right.
So this is your fourth book. First one,
The
shooting.
I know there's kids here, I won't swear.
Don't swear, try hard.
I didn't like the first three.
The first three. So this is your favourite then?
They were all about me, and I've said to someone just before, I quite like talking about this because I have to talk about other people. And I always hated talking about myself, you know, like, and just, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
Just didn't get it. So this one's brilliant because I've managed to reflect and go over the reason I'm still sat here today in 2018 at 38 years of age, able to talk about the sport. It took me 2 years to realise it's absolutely
you love it.
Love, you know, and it means so much to me, you know. And I think when I think what I could have been growing up in Kilburn as a young kid. I'm quite grateful for that, actually, because it's given me everything. And when something gives you everything, you know, you have to, at some point, reflect. And that's what this is. And it's an honest account. It's an open account. I've given a lot of myself to it. And I got to the point when I was writing, I don't give a monkey's what certain people think about it, as to the contents of it, as to who's in there, because you can't change how certain people made you feel. And you can't change your story as, I wouldn't say ashamed of it you are or whatever. It is what it is. And you're a product of your childhood, as we all are. And I'm witnessing that every day with my own kids. So.
It's kind of maybe a slightly strange thing and a paradox that the thing you love so much, riding a bike and becoming a professional bike rider, which was your dream, in a way, perhaps moved you a little bit away and took you away from that love of the sport and of riding a bike.
Problem I had was I got good at the thing. So you dream of it, as most kids my age did. I've talked about this a lot with Janto Barker because we were the same age, and we used to dream of it. We were obsessed with it, reading the magazines and this, that, and the other. Could tell you all the results, what shoes certain people were wearing, everything. I just happened to progress and get good at the sport that I love to do. And most of the kids I knocked around with as a kid dreamt of lifting the FA Cup for Spurs or whatever in the area we grew up in. And I dreamt of winning, well, not winning actually, because I never actually thought I could win the Tour, but taking the yellow jersey in the Tour de France and winning an Olympic gold. And I told my art teacher when I was 12, Miss Kennett, I was peeing around in class one day, and she said, "What are you going to do with your life, Brad? You're going to have to get your head down." And I said, "I want to wear the yellow jersey in the Tour, and I want to win Olympic gold." And she laughed at me. I'll never forget her laugh. Stupid old bat. And she. But you've got to remember the time, like this was 1992, John Major was Prime Minister, it was, you know, under Conservative rule, and late 80s, early 90s, inner city London, it was quite a violent time, you know. I went to the same school that Philip Lawrence got stabbed, the head teacher, you know, and so I witnessed all that, and so for a kid in Kilburn to come out and want to wear lycra in the mid-90s, now it seems perfectly normal.
Or your mum's tights.
I wouldn't have got...
Your mum's tights.
Yeah, but, you know, people laugh now when you say that because it seems perfectly normal, and people won't remember a time without Rafa or without things like that, because there you go. It's over now. The greatest century in cycling is over because they're now selling on Wiggle. So
Do you know,
the greatest decade in cycling is over.
It was a sad moment, wasn't it? I got that email, and something in my heart sank.
Well, there are alternatives. Le Col, but
well,
Le Col by Wiggins. Yeah. In all good shops. Yeah.
Given how much the history means to you of the sport, to, you know, icons, Bradley Wiggins, in small letters, I have to say, nonetheless, with a foreword by Eddy Merckx. I mean, that must mean the world.
Yeah, and I went to his house to do it with him, you know, and he's just the loveliest guy. I spent most of the day with him, talking and interviewing him, and he's, for me, he's the greatest, you know, and he's up there with Muhammad Ali, Bobby Moore, Pelé, people of that ilk, you know, and I've just been struggling all day to not lick his face. You know? And I told him at the end, I said, you know, they kept saying, do you want to look at each other and smile for a photograph? And I said, but if I do that, I'll probably end up licking his face.
Did you ever lick the face of that poster of Sean Yates? Because I think you had a bit of a man crush going on for Sean.
No,
Yates.
but
you get the
all
book
of them.
and his short
Yeah, all of
things
them. I
with
mean,
the
yeah,
earring and
I had an earring when I was 14, short shorts, all that sort of stuff. You know, and but I explained this the other night at a thing now because obviously Lance Armstrong's in the book, right?
we're going to talk about Lance.
Of course, we have to talk about Lance.
Talk about Lance.
You know, but no, I know. But trouble is, you get idiots like Ned Boulting slagging me off in the Daily Mail. You know, without any context, without any background, without any painting any pictures. You know, so, and it's not that he just says, you know, I disagree with Brad. He has to get personal and compare me to Donald Trump and all that. So hang on a minute, this isn't just some crazy rant. Let me explain. I'm an inner city London boy, 13 years of age, growing up in London. Detach myself from the group, have the confidence enough to detach myself from the group of boys that I was with, who at 13 stopped kicking a ball around, start looking in car windows. This is in a day you could nick car stereos and stuff. You used to pull them out in a big square with a handle.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
Hilarious.
Ram raid in Newcastle.
And when it got to that stage and starting to smoke and your peer pressure and all that, I thought, actually, you know what, this isn't for me. I knew the difference between right and wrong. I had a good family behind me, and I was incredibly ambitious. And it makes me quite emotional when I think about it, you know, because I just think where we're from never amounted to anything. There was no... And so when I'm 13... There's 3 people in particular that I watch win a race that year. I didn't know what cycle.
This is 1993. It's like the axis of your life almost.
We have Eurosport has just come onto our screens. Cycling Weekly comes out once a week on a Thursday. Cycling Week is the only thing you could go up on a Thursday. I used to nip out in lunch break of school and get it and then read the results from the previous weekend. And I watched Johan Museeuw win the Tour of Flanders. Didn't know who he was, didn't know what the jersey was that he represented, just watched it and I was like, you know, my mum explained to me that this was like scoring an FA Cup winning goal if you were from Wembley or whatever. I watched Chris Lillywhite win the milk race. It was live, it wasn't live, it was a roundup show every night on Sky for 2 weeks. And to me, at 13, not knowing what cycling was, the milk race was the biggest thing in the world. And Chris won that. And then I watched this 21-year-old American, in awe of this 21-year-old American, winning the World Championships in Oslo. He was Lance Armstrong. I can't change the fact that Lance Armstrong won that, you know? So, from that point on, I was effing cessed with cycling, right? Sorry, I know there's a kid there.
I imagine they've heard that word before.
And well, my kids definitely have.
Yeah.
And so that was it. I was deciding what I want to do. I'm 13. I'm in year 8 at school, year 9, whatever it is, and I want to be a professional cyclist. I want to get out of Kilburn. I don't want to work in Ladbrokes. I don't want to become a milkman. I don't want to be on the rock and roll with my older brother going to sign on every week. So I'm going out. Whenever I go out the door, I'm pretending to be Lance Armstrong or whatever, or Miguel Indurain or Johan Museeuw or another guy who's down there, Bjarne Riis, who was there. And so I'm not thinking at that age, well, you know, in 18 years' time, this guy's going to be the biggest fraud in cycling. I'm not thinking that. No. I'm just thinking, how the hell do I get out of Kilburn and make something of myself? Now, you know, 15, whatever, I can't do the math. I didn't get a GCE maths. What was it? How many years later did I win the Tour, Jonathan?
2012, so that is like 12, 7, 19 years.
19 years later, I've gone to win the Tour. But not only that, 2 years before that, or 3 years before that, I'm going toe-to-toe in the Tour de France for the podium at Mont Ventoux with the same guy I've watched who got me out of Kilburn Expo. So that's the background of that. Is it best to not write about Lance in here and just still be in Kilburn?
Oh, God, you can't change the emotion. I watched Ben Johnson win in 88
no one will ever change
in the Olympics, and it doesn't change the emotional experience of watching. But here's a question. Do you think he's been unfairly singled out and punished? You look at the history of cycling.
In some ways, but at the same time, he's the poster boy for what's happened to the sport now. And his behaviour, granted, hasn't always been...
But there's lots of people who have been...
Look, at the end of the day, there's plenty of people that come out and made a career of themselves out of becoming victim of their own choices. He didn't choose to do that, you know? tough character. I know him quite well. I still speak to him. I'm sorry about that. I can't change
His
it.
podcast is good.
You know, this isn't for 1 minute to condone or anything he did or forgive him for that. He knows he did wrong. You know, all right, you don't come out in public, but at some point you've got to get on with your life, and you've got to move on, because we've seen what's happened to Jan Ulrich. And for some people, I don't know what's ever going to happen. You know, we're going to find him in a hotel room like Marco Pantani. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's winning the war. He's not the perfect role model. He's not behaved in the perfect way since. But, you know, someone asked me last week on radio, has he apologized to you? I'm not self-righteous enough that he owes me an apology. I don't give a shit. You know, he's a human being, and I don't like seeing anyone on their arse. And, you know, I mean, again, it's not to condone that, and it's also not to... I didn't give a shit about Lance during his era when he was winning the Tours, because I was trying to do my own thing. But that particular experience in 1993, that will never change anything. That's why I'm sat here today with some bloke who won a gold medal jumping in a sandpit.
Well, indeed. How bizarre is that?
No,
So,
I'm not being facetious.
No, it's fine, it's fine.
But it shows you the level that cycling has got to now, that people from other sports are now presenting.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So 1993 is pivotal. But as I read those first 4 chapters, Museo, Ballerini losing Roubaix in 93, then Chris Lillywhite Milk Race, then Indurain Tour de France. The feeling I get from reading it is that you had a greater love, almost emotional response to the monuments, to the classics, than you did to the Tour.
I did all of cycling, anything that was on. You know, we're flooded with cycling now, whether it's the Tour of whatever's on Summit yesterday. I can't even pronounce the name. You know, and but at that time, there was no cycling on. You used to wait to the end of the year and buy Tim Grady VHS from Bike Shop. Remember them, bike shops? Yeah. They, you used to have to do that. So, or the Channel 4 show, you know, which was on every night, and it seemed, when you're 12, 13, it seemed like the whole world stopped to go and watch Channel 4 for half an hour, you know, with the famous theme tune music. Obviously, it's different now, because you're on the telly all day with Brian Smith, the race coach. You know, so it has changed the way we consume cycling now. And in some ways, it's easy to forget the time when, you know, you waited for this thing to come on, and that's the time But
in terms of your passion, and you know, if you had a regret in your career, I guess it would not be winning Roubaix. No.
Yeah,
yes. I mean,
I'd love to have won that, but at some point, you know, but you know, I just sit here now thinking, actually, you know what, you had a pretty good innings.
You had a great innings. Let's be honest.
Happy with that. And at some point, you've got to accept that you're never going to be able to moonwalk. You know? I've tried many times.
You can still try. Strictly Come Dancing.
You know, of course I would have loved to win, and perhaps that, you know, that romantic kind of child in me perhaps hampered me at times.
See, you talk about romance, and you say it a number of times that romance is the heart of cycling. I'd like to hear you talk about that.
You know, and
what do you mean?
It's hard, really, because I'm going to get absolutely hammered for this tomorrow. But I know a lot of people feel the same way as me. I'm sick of being told how to feel about this sport by people that have never ridden a bike. You know, and I'll decide what I want to feel about this sport. You know, and it's not, you know, no one has to agree with that. I understand the open wound that's left within cycling, and I understand that. Everyone's got a right to an opinion. For me, it's not a debate. I'm not going to go on Question Time and debate it, but that's the way I feel, having written this book, and I've realised that's how I feel. I started collecting these jerseys in this book at 18, you know what I mean? And I just happened to end up winning the Tour. I'm still doing it, still travelling around Belgium and stuff, buying.
And you've still just got a jersey from Ivan Bassa?
Ivan kindly gave me.
Ivan has just given you the Giro.
And you know, it's always been a passion. I feel that I have to curate this and care for it, and you know, look after for the next generations of people in terms of a museum or whatever, and Simpsons jerseys and Fuentes and Ocaña and all these guys. And I would have done that anyway. Just happened to have won the Tour and all that other stuff, and you know, so you're relevant. I don't want to be relevant. I'd rather not be relevant. You know, rather go and get pissed without being in the Daily Mail the next day, or you know. But you can't, and I accept that. But I ain't going to bloody change either.
Don't. The most profound chapter on the book, and you mentioned his name there, is without question Tom Simpson. And the first thing I think, that struck me is that I hadn't realised what an incredible cyclist he was. Because all you think about is him dying on Ventoux and the kind of drugs resonances, and it's bad. But actually, what a remarkable bike rider, and what he achieved.
Well, he was. I mean, he won the Tour of Flanders, he won the Tour of Lombardy, Paris-Nice. I mean, in a time when there was a mafia and there was a system, and for a British rider to break into that, it was very, very difficult. And, you know, Tom, for some reason, I don't know, I ended up having such an affinity with him. I think it was romanticised by the pictures and the fact he died and all this, but obviously I met the family as well and his daughters. And it heightened with things like his daughter said to me last year, after I won the Tour, she went to his grave and put a picture of me on the grave and said, "This guy's just done what you died trying to do, Dad." I mean, fucking hell, talk about pull your heartstrings, you know. I rode up Ventoux in 2009 with a picture of him on my top tube because I was in the same position as him or there or thereabouts with him trying to do that. And aside from him dying, yes, he died doing how he died. I understand that. But this was a guy who had 2 children and a wife. Was a son of someone. And, you know, human beings at the end of the day. You know, I mean, all the people that, you know, with Jan the other week, you know, Ulrich, you know, it's like, well, he deserves that then, doesn't he, after he's done for the sport? And it's like, well, yeah, but at some point, this is about humanity. It's not about sport anymore. And I'll never get my head around that with people. Perhaps because I've experienced it in my own personal life. But again, that's me, you know. I'm not asking everyone to think the same way as me, you know, so.
And winning the Tour, you said you felt like you won it with you.
Well, yeah, of course, you know. It's easy to say now, but it also sounds a bit cheesy. But I felt that somehow, you know, his spirit was with me. Certainly on Ventoux in 2009, it was a bizarre experience that I never experienced before, and you know, I can't explain it. You know.
The other guy who clearly had a very profound effect on you, and I talked about his poster a bit sarcastically in your man crush, was Sean Yates.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, when I was 14, again, Kilburn, hated school, you know, wanted to get out, wanted to be a professional cyclist. We had 2 professional cyclists did the Tour de France. There were Chris Boardman and Sean Yates. Chris was amazing, lovely fella. But he came on the telly, won the prologue that year in dominant style. He changed the face of time trialing, but all he spoke about was heart rates and blood test results. You know, and he said things like he still says today on the commentary, like aerodynamic and momentum. And Sean used to come on and say, they said, "Sean, you've done it, man. You've took the yellow jersey. How do you feel?" And he'd said, "It ain't over till the fat lady sings," you know. And I could relate to Sean more than I could relate to Chris Boardman. And I took 2 days off school to watch those stages, you know. And then I took the 3rd day off to watch him get into the break into Rennes when he took the yellow jersey. And it's hard to describe, you know, because to everyone else it just sounds ridiculous, but like those people, like they changed my life, you know. Again, I wouldn't be sat here today with you, Jonathan. And Sean was one of them, definitely. The crazy thing about it is that I, you know, subsequently went on to get to know Sean, and then he ended up being my DS when I won the Tour. And the proudest moment for me is when Sean, I asked him if he would come to Hampton Court to follow me around the time trial and be the voice on the radio during that day, because we'd done it all through the Tour de France. He got on the train to Victoria, he got on a Boris bike and rode out to Hampton Court, did his business and rode home. And this is like, and I remember thinking at that time, like, this is Sean Yates coming on a Boris bike from Victoria Station. And to see the change, because obviously that was the most stark moment when we all realised cycling had changed in this country. For him, that must have been quite a touching moment to see that. And then to be able to follow me around in that time trial, it was incredible. And Sean being Sean, I didn't see him at the finish. He just disappeared. He didn't want the limelight. It's not about him. He went back home.
So funny, you talk about relating much more to Sean Yates rather than Boardman and aerodynamics and momentum, and yet it was through Team Sky and that scientific approach that you won the Tour.
As much as I hate it, it's not in keeping with the nostalgia and the romance of the Tour. It serves its purpose, and it worked for me, and I did it, you know. I mean, so I can't...
Did you feel, I mean...
Well, I think when you're in there, you're just doing a job and you're trying to get the best out of your body, and you listen to them all, and you're doing what you're doing. And it's different. It's weird. I still never.
Is it like you're not being Bradley Wiggins almost? Did you have to almost?
No, it
adopt
is
a
like
different
being,
persona?
yeah. But when you do it, it don't feel the same as when. So the first time that happened was obviously I watched Chris Bourne win the Olympics in Barcelona, and thought I'd love to do that. 12 years later, I won the event I watched with Chris trackside at the Olympics. And then I win the tour. Well, you win the tour, and it's like, well, it's not really the same tour as I watched Merckx and Indra and all those guys win. It doesn't feel the same. It still doesn't feel the same. I go and talking to Eddy out there, and it's like, you're trying to draw comparisons with the GOAT, and it's like, there is no comparison. You know, it doesn't seem the same. People will say it is. I never will, and I think that's the healthiest thing, the stage I've got to 2 years into retirement, because I think I've realised a lot the last 2 years, and I'm very detached from the person I used to be. And people say, oh, are you Bradley Wiggins in the street and all this? And I say, I used to be, because I'm not the person that they associate with me being, if you like. And I think that's a very healthy thing, you know. I think the minute you start thinking too highly of yourself and clinging on to the adulation and all that, I think in this day and age with the way the world is, it's just...
And what's your relationship with the bike now? Do you ride a lot?
I haven't ridden a great deal.
So the romance
but
was the competition, the images, the aesthetic.
Yeah, it is. I actually want to ride my bike a bit more now. So once the kilos went past 90 odd, I thought I'd better start doing something about it. And actually, I'm at the point now I want to do it again. Yeah, I think that's the important thing. The last few years of my career, I didn't enjoy them. It was a routine. It was, you know, you had to do it. So when you have to do something, you know, you end up having enough of it. So, and my kids became the priority when I retired. They're at a very important age, 12, 13, and they've had to live through all this. You know, live with the BBC on your doorstep with packages that never existed and all this crap. And you know, our priority after 2012 was that they grew up normal. You know, we didn't want them growing up complete idiots, growing up in Monaco, wearing loafers and stuff, you know. No, you want them, seriously, but you want them growing up as normal as possible, with normal friends, and knowing that it's normal to go to the shops to buy a pint of milk, that no one does it for you. Mm-hmm. And that's important. All that other stuff, tour and all that crap, it's nothing, is it really, when you think about it?
So who nearly made it and didn't quite get in there?
So many. Freddie Martins. But a lot of people that really influenced me at a young age, you know, like Matt Illingworth, Colin Sturgis. I roomed with Colin Sturgis at 18 at the Commonwealth Games. This guy was a world champion. He rode for ADR with Le Monde and all that. And there's a funny story. Jesus, a funny story, but I don't know if I could tell you about it now.
You can. I think there's yeah.
It's not actually very pleasant. Oh, fuck it, all right. It's
I think you get a lot of smiles from the kids for your swear words,
right.
That's for sure.
It involves toilets and having a crap and all that, so if you're up for it. Right. This story's been told a few times on Instagram under pseudonyms and everything, but here we go. So I go to the Commonwealth Games at 18 years of age. I'm like in awe of Rob Ailes, Chris Lillywhite, Chris Walker's there, Matt Illingworth, Johnny Clay, all these guys I'd looked up to used to race for Banana that I'm racing with. So I'm this shy 18-year-old kid who's just won the Junior Worlds, and I'm in room with them all. 6 of us in an apartment at the Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur. Middle of the night, I go for a crap, right? You know, one of them dehydrated airplane craps. And do me business, realise there's no toilet roll. So I use the towel that they give us, right, on the bed. Everyone gets a towel on their beds from the organisation. I thought, I'll use that, you know, middle of the night, don't want to wake anyone up. But then after
we know where this is going, don't we?
Then after that, I'm thinking, right, what do I do with this towel? I'm 18, I'm shitting myself, you know. How am I going to explain this to all this lot tomorrow? So I put it behind the fridge in the apartment, right? So for 3 days, there's this smell. And then after 3 days, Matt Illingworth finds this towel to, what the fuck is that, man? To everyone knows Matt Illingworth from Essex, big teeth. And I just didn't say anything, I kept quiet. They all thought it was someone else, Rob Ailes, this, that, and the other. And I admitted to it about 6 years later. Not a great story, but
brilliant.
So it's known as Towelgate amongst the 1998 Commonwealth squad.
I think we should invite some, but yeah. I think we should invite some friends on. I have to say, as you were speaking to Fabian backstage and talking about your respective weights of 92 kilograms, I was feeling slightly smug as I'm still at my jumping weight of 72 kilograms because I cycle.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah. A couple of...
You still got the world record, haven't you?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
No one's ever broke it.
Not yet. A couple of icons are going to come on stage. One of them, the greatest of all time. We'll recognise him later in the Hall of Fame. Please welcome Eddy Merckx and Fabian Cancellara. Please welcome Eddy Merckx and Fabian Cancellara. What can I say? Talk amongst ourselves. Oh, I think this is it. No, it's all right. I'll bring it down. Have you got Fabian? Did you leave the Swiss boy behind? Fabian?
Fabian is...
It's Fabian, here he is.
Oh, Fabian, you're right, mate. How you doing? All right. Good to see you.
It's ready?
No, my mic's
bit hot.
fallen to bits.
Do you want to sit on the end one there, Fabian? Is that all right? And then Bradley's going to come
on
in.
there.
He's going to stay in his seat. Eddy, do you want to go in the middle?
The middle?
And then, who thought I could do stage arranging? And you want to bring your... It's no order. You want to bring your... So I can see you? Are you okay?
Mike's gone a bit limp.
Oh, it has gone a bit limp. 1973, in his book, when Felice Gimondi won, and you had your teammate. So it's very good of you to write his forward.
Uh-huh. Yeah, 73, Gimondi won, not the World Championships.
And you had your teammate Martins with you as well.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, a big mistake.
It's not a good... It's not a good situation, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were two Belgians in the front, and I attack and they take me back, and so in the end, Gimondi won.
When did you first meet Bradley?
Oh, it must be a long time ago. I don't remember. I think it was somewhere in France when he ride for Française des Jeux, I think so. Yeah.
And did you think then he could win the Tour de France?
Of course he didn't.
No.
I bet I know exactly what he thought. He's this fucking stick of piss.
You're good.
No, I know it very well, but I was not thinking he's going to win the Tour de France. But after he did it, he lose a lot of weight, and so he could win the Tour. It was important, and he win a great Tour de France. Yeah.
Wins a great, yeah. Fabian, you're contemporary with Bradley. You had some great battles, and in your chapter, he talks about the Junior World Championships, 1998, when you
20 years ago, wasn't it? Yeah.
That's when you killed him. Do you remember it? Do you remember? In fact, do you remember that he was behind you?
No.
No, of course he didn't.
Sorry. No, I don't. I mean, that's just honest. Honestly, I mean, it was my first year. I was a year younger as all the rest, probably, and was the first big race. And but at that moment, or at that time in '98, I didn't know anything about Bradley Wiggins.
And then 2011, again mentioned in the chapter in the book. You lost a flat TT in the Tour of Bavaria. How did you feel? I mean, you didn't like losing, did you?
Yeah. You know, those races after the Classics been mostly like was it Tour of Belgium or California
You thought twice about it, yeah.
or Bavarian race. That was the first race after Roubaix. Yeah. And so I'm sometimes a bit slower, and maybe I did a week longer rest than maybe others, so my shape wasn't the best. But I mean, hey, when it comes to a time trial, of course, I tried always to focus and to get the best out, but then there was someone else was there.
And of course, as Brits, we have great memories, not just of Bradley's yellow jersey in 2012, but the time trial as well.
Which one?
You don't remember it?
There's many.
There's many in the Olympics in 2012.
Yeah, I mean, the Olympics, yeah, one of my, I don't say darkest moments in my career, but one of my hardest and toughest one. I mean, crashing out in Richmond Park, losing a potentially possibility medal, and then towards also what could come later with the time trial. Olympic Games been gone. Maybe I have the most famous corner now in Richmond Park. That's something extra. But on the end, it was tough. But hey.
Yeah, as you
Yeah, I mean, I did say in the book actually that I think it went off in the order of the previous Olympic Games. So Fabian was off last, and Tony Martin was dominating time trials at that time. And I remember finishing, and with 5K to go, I'd heard that I was 35 seconds up on Tony Martin. So I kept going, finished, and then they said, you've won it, and I kept saying, no, I haven't won it. Fabian hasn't finished yet. I'd heard nothing about Fabian, and I couldn't believe that I'd won until Fabian crossed the line, and I saw that he hadn't won it, because I just, even at that point, I never underestimated, because I knew how great he was, and it was just, until someone like that finishes, you can never underestimate what they might have pulled out in the last 5K. I knew he was struggling with his, obviously, hand from the crash, so you couldn't, still never underestimate him at that time, so, yeah.
We started the conversation about you in 1993 as a kid, watching all these races, and what the history of the sport means to you, what this book means to you, but to be sitting, I mean, I know you've met Eddy on many occasions, but to be sitting here next to him, it's...
I've already told you, and I want to lick your face before.
and he still came on stage.
But it's hard. It's hard. Like I say, this man is so iconic and so synonymous with a time we see now on these films like Stars in Water Carriers, La Course en Tête, and all that. And even when I talk to Axel, his son, I can't help but think of Axel sat in that chair in La Course en Tête when you're trying to give him beer when he's just a baby. And because they're just, it was like a sponge as a kid. And I used to take all that stuff in, just watch them back, And as I said, it's just an honour to be sat here today, in the company of these people. A kid from Kilburn growing up watching all that, and then he sat on stage talking to him, I can still remember that stage in Stars and Water Carriers where, at the foot of Paganella, and Eddy's leading the group, and there's the music and all that, and he's dropping them, Gimondi, Zilioli, Adja, Fuentes, Passarodona, all these guys off the back of his, and it's just... I wish I'd concentrated more at school and had that kind of memory of... that was my schooling as a kid,
I mean, you could have been an academic.
Maybe. I got a photographic memory, but it was for shit and not actually important stuff. In '98, when we went to the Commonwealth Games, I told Chris Lillywhite all the shoes he wore through his career, It's a bit like Mastermind, your specialised chosen subject. Or when I was a kid, there used to be a thing called You Bet. Matthew Kelly used to come on and go, he said, I'll tell you. He used to tell him, if you show me half a picture of a shoe, I'll tell you who wore it, or stuff like that,
That's special
Sorry,
about Bradley.
you won't know what the You Bet.
That's what's special about
That's, I mean, listen what he is explaining, or the stories. I mean, honestly, I don't know what he's talking about, but but the names, I understand all the names, and what Bradley has home is like, he has this in his heart. It's not just, he rode the bicycle, he likes it, and passion this. He's living it. I mean.
Someone described me as a dirty little pervert, which I thought was quite apt actually for cycling.
All the jerseys and the story. And that's
not in a Jimmy Savile way.
That's amazing.
Well, no. I've seen your
stolen selling jerseys, right? On eBay.
Eddy, you see you smiling there, and in the forward, you talk about when you were a young kid and you had your dreams. Do you feel you relate to Bradley and what he's talking about with these great stars of the sport and the way they inspired him?
No, I think I have also a dream. When I was a child, I was winning Tour de France, and this is the nicest thing that you can have. And I can understand Bradley when he was saying that he was watching because also he wants to win the Tour de France. So, but the things are changing, and.
And for you, Fabian, you didn't have posters on your wall? of cyclists? What?
I had more the classic riders, Tafi, Ballerini, but my idol was Miguel at that time. And I mean, the Tour was more Miguel and then the classics, like I said. But I mean, the biggest mistake I made was in '04 when I won in Liège. I just said, hey, I want to win the Tour towards all the press and towards all the people. But I mean, at that moment, you are in yellow, and that's going to be my next dream. That's what I want. But later on, I figured out that the Tour wasn't a race for me. I think, I don't know if it was because of focusing more on time trialing after that what came, and I continued my path where I had my strengths, where I was strong. And I knew it when I need, or if I want to go towards the Tour, I need to lose more weight. And at that moment, my mind wasn't ready for going into something like that.
In terms of the transition, I know it's a different era, Eddy, but the transition that you made from becoming a kind of sprinter classics to winning Grand Tours, what was the change for you?
I think in the time all the riders did the classics and the tours, but I started as young rider, and I didn't stage races because I have my mechanic was Fabian Cancellara, and he say no ride too much. When you will be professional, you will ride enough. So so I start. I won first the World Championship in '64, and then I passed as professional, and so I was first a classic rider because I did also the Giro in '67, but on the end I was too young, and then after '68 I won the Giro on the Trecime di Lavaredo. Was a hard climb, and so I was convinced that I could win the Tour de France, what I did also the year after. Yeah, that's for me the Tour de France was the biggest race. It's still the biggest race of cycling, and it was also 30 years that the Belgian rider didn't win the Tour. So it's a child dream that comes. Yeah.
I mean, you two just must literally marvel at this guy's range. And his Palmar. You must marvel at his range.
Yeah, I mean,
and
there'll never be another one, you know. I think, obviously, there's riders like Fabian and Tom that won, you know, like Johan did, and that, you know, 3 Paris-Roubaix, 3 Tour of Flanders. But I think someone who will go and win 5 Tours, 5 Giros, you know, 1,800 races, over 500 wins, you know, it's and obviously winning from early season to the end, and then do the 6 days.
Yeah.
I mean,
but when I ride, I found it normal what I did, no? But now afterwards, I say, yeah.
that's because Dave B didn't look after you.
I don't-
Imagine if Dave B had looked after
I mean, or Fabian for that matter.
But yeah, it's obviously cycling's changed, and you know, but at the end of the day, I think we're all here because we follow the people that have gone before us, and of course, Eddy is, you know, one of the most notable and recognisable. You said this morning, just coming in London, people were stopping you on the train, and you know, so it's. I think it's still, he's so iconic, you know.
So who would be your icons, Eddy? If you were writing a book like this, who would your top 3 be?
My top?
Your top 3. Who would you put if it was icons by Eddy Merckx? Who would be the 3 riders?
I think
Idol
is one.
You know?
Stan Ockers, you said as well.
Sorry?
Stan Ockers. When
Stan Ockers was my hero when I was a child, no? Yeah. And then, I don't know, Bradley.
It'll be interesting when you meet Bernard Hinault next, because he'll probably be pretty pissed off he's not in there.
Well, might punch me. I mean, I don't know. No, I mean, Hinault's a great rider, isn't it? But there's a running theme of that, is that everyone in there is quite modest and actually really nice people. I think.
What about Lance? No, so we've got Lance in there.
Hey,
I mean, yeah,
He's
keep
not
me-
modest and
listen,
nice, anyway.
I speak to Lance regularly, and he's okay with me.
He's okay.
You know,
And
sorry.
And what about the youngster of the book, by quite a long way, Fabian? Who would your icons be?
From the youngsters now.
Well, do you know, actually, yes, I was going to ask that, but yeah, let's talk about the current crop, and then you guys are going to get a chance to ask questions, because you'll never get a chance like this again, frankly, and I don't want to deny you of it. But yeah, of the current, and maybe we get all three of you, of the current riders.
It's Peter
Yeah.
Sagan. He stands out for me right now, or most of them. Yeah.
Alaphilippe could become quite something.
Yeah. But
Do you think or not? No?
Yeah, but that's young, really young.
Yeah.
And he's French.
He's French.
Young.
He's French.
Yeah, I mean, what has changed a lot is that the younger riders becoming earlier strong or fast. I mean, we have heaps of young riders, but give them a bit of time. And first, I mean, they have to prove more. And also Alaphilippe has proven a lot, but he has still to prove. And Peter has proved, and he has proved and proved and proved. So handling pressure, I mean, all kinds of things, variations of victories, the way he won. He's the most iconic cycling has in now.
Valverde?
Yeah, that's an old generation, right?
It's a no, but he's still.
No, but of course. I mean, if we point out that year, I mean, I was at home with goosebumps when he won. He was the rider I wanted to see on that top there to get that jersey. He deserved it more than everyone else in that pro peloton that cycling has recently, or cycling has. Because he never gave up. He's from early season until to the last day of the season. He's there. He helps. He wins. He's special. I mean, and he's a champ.
Eddy, of the guys now that you look at, who do you like the most?
Yeah, Peter Sagan for sure.
Yeah.
That's normal, no? Then you have Chris Froome. Is yeah, now you're retired. You're retired. Thomas was very impressive this year, and yeah, the Dumoulin also. But that's, I think, big champion too. Won the Giro always, and I think this year maybe I can win the Tour de France too.
Yeah.
With a big competitor with Bardet, Dumoulin.
So Sagan's definitely in there. We'll maybe just pass over Chris and talk about
No, Chris, great athlete, don't get me wrong. But I think Bardet is definitely someone who, obviously, he got second to Valverde, didn't he? I think he's definitely got a personality, something for the future. He's sort of really good for the sport. But there are all these young guys like Bernal and that in Sky, which, sure. I mean, in the future, he's now, after the way he rode this year, you have to put him as a future Tour winner, definitely.
Let's talk about G, because I mentioned it in the Eurosport panel, whether he didn't quite get the recognition he deserved, because we were all looking at Froome for so long in the race, and then we saw it, 2 mountaintop finishes. Was it Fausto Coppi, the last person to do back-to-back in the yellow jersey? Dominant win in the end, and yet I think even on some of the websites, when they're looking at the Tour de France route, they first quoted Chris Froome, not Geraint Thomas. Do you think he perhaps got a little...
Well, I mean, he went under the radar, didn't he? And it helped him, I think. And he said all the right things in interviews, that it's still for Froome. But one thing G is really good at that he doesn't get enough praise for is the way he rides on the flat stages. I don't think he came out the first 10 in the whole Tour. And the praise for someone that Luke Rowe doesn't get, because he puts him in those positions. The pair of them, I don't know anyone like them. That maybe Stuart O'Grady or someone that can ride in the bunch like they can. And this is a guy who's Team Pursuit World Champion, Olympic Team Pursuit World Champion. He was 7th in Paris-Roubaix. And there's not many Tour winners that can go top 10 in Paris-Roubaix. So it shows you the diversity of someone like Geraint. And he was, without doubt, the strongest rider in the Tour. And he could win another 2 Tours, depending on how the team goes now with a Chris. Because a Chris Froome on form for sure has got another tour win in him.
And he'll want that for 5.
So we'll see how it pans out next
No
year.
problem with that.
No problem. Can G win?
But you know, this year maybe Bardet can win because he's
Yeah.
riding Eddy Merckx bikes, so it can change.
Okay, we've got about 6 or 7 minutes left, so here's a chance for you to ask some questions. So this gentleman here.
Eddy, when you won your races, there was no race radio, correct?
No race radio. No,
No,
when you won.
No.
So now, obviously, Fabian, Bradley, race radio. Do you think races would be more interesting without it?
No race radio. Is that rather than no power meters? What do we think about no
Maybe
race
it will
radio?
change something, but for now, for the safety of the riders, maybe it's a good thing. For the race, not that much, but for the safety, because round around it's more dangerous than when I was racing.
Do you guys have any thoughts about? I mean, not that the racing wasn't exciting this year; it was very exciting. Do you think this is I mean, beyond Reese said it was that you felt it was like an anti-Sky thing, rather than a let's make cycling more exciting?
I mean, for the safety, of course, is necessary. I think it's good. And if it comes to tactic, I mean, the radio is one thing. It's okay, but I did many races where the radio wasn't working, so then you had to handle that by yourself on the end, and that's, I think. And that's what the problem is with the younger generation. They come up already with all that digital stuff. So then they know, and they will lose the instinct. They lose to ride the race. They lose to learn in another way of the natural way to ride the bike. And I mean, if it's good or bad, I mean, you cannot take that away. But it's on everyone individually to say, okay, how are we going to use it? And to the team. If you, on the end, you are in the car, say, hey guys, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. I mean, hey, that's dumb. So you have to be your own and self-responsibility. You do world championship without race radio.
Yeah.
So you need to learn those. And if you're not, then you don't going to win.
I can remember Sean Kelly talking after the Roubaix stage in the Tour this year, and talking about smelling the opportunity to win something. I guess if you're so immersed in what's in your ear and what's on your computer, you lose that instinct.
Yeah, I think it's true of sport as a whole now. I think everything's so robotic, everything's so pre-planned, isn't it? And we watch football now, and it's all kind of they need to be told instructions on what to do. And rugby's all about set plays and this, that, and the other. No, you lose that kind of
Spontaneity.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's a difficult one because you can't. In some ways, you've got to let the sport progress and that, but I don't know. I'm not really.
That's why I prefer my time to ride was not that old stuff. And
All that you like that, just to be free.
Yeah.
Gentleman there.
Can I just ask, Eddy, for your reminiscence or your memories of Tom Simpson?
Eddy, your memories of Tom Simpson. Your memories of
Yeah,
Tom Brandt.
very good, very nice guy, Tom. I ride with him in 66, 67, before he died in the Tour. But yeah, he was a big champion. I remember during the 6 days and so, he was a very nice guy.
But he flicked you in Paris-Nice, didn't he? You told me.
Yeah, he flicked me in Paris-Nice. Yeah, sure. I flicked me and I was very mad. And then, yeah.
Yeah, of course, if you get flicked, you must be mad, man.
Yeah. And then 2 stages later, I helped him winning Paris-Nice, so I forget it because he was a nice guy.
But Eddy was the only rider that went to the funeral because
Yeah.
Eddy didn't ride the Tour that year. So all the other riders were at the Tour still because they carried on. And Eddy only did the Giro that year, so he went to the funeral. And yeah.
I was on holiday actually in Ronda in Andalusia and went into a photographic shop, and the photographer was a nephew of Tom Simpson. A guy called, if you're ever there, you should pop in and say hi.
Yeah.
Lovely guy. Right, another question. Just the guy back there with the phone.
Yeah, question for Brad. Who was the best rider that you rode against who never won the Grand Tour?
Who never won a Grand Tour. I would say Andy Schleck, but of course he got given a tour in afterwards. But obviously people talk about Vandenbroek and people like that, but I'd raced against Andy, and Fabian will probably tell you as well because he knows him very well. But I'd never seen anyone quite so naturally gifted and talented as Andy, and in particular in those tours, 2009, 2010. He was sensational to watch, really. But of course, on the history list, he's won a Tour de France, but it's not quite the same as actually crossing the line in yellow and winning it. But Andy, for me, was probably, yeah. And his career was so short as well, and yeah.
This is one of the things you said in the chapter about Lance, that amazing ability over 7 Tour de France's to not have a bad day, to not have anything go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, controversy aside, that's where I said that in Henri de Grange, who established the Tour de France in the early 1900s, in his mind, he envisaged a rider that he was designing a race and a course, the type of rider that he would have envisaged winning his race in terms of what they had to contend with, what they had to go through, you know, this, that, and the other. Lance ticked all the boxes, controversy aside and all that other stuff. But, you know, when we saw him riding across the grass and all that, when Belocchi crashed and, you know, the flag getting caught in his wheel and all that, he embodied everything that Henri de Grange back in the early 1900s, as Eddy did, would have, you know, the type of rider that would win his race, you know. So that's where the thing comes off. He was the perfect rider. In context, it sounds completely different. Bradley Wiggins says he's the perfect tour rider.
Yeah.
Do you understand me? That's the Daily Mail for you.
Absolutely. And a lot of other outlets, I think it's fair to say.
Anything to do with Ed Bolton.
One more question. Down there.
Do you ride any other types of bikes, like mountain bikes, cyclocross, BMX maybe?
I don't personally know, but...
No, I didn't ride mountain bike race. I did cyclocross, yes, a few times, but lot 6 days on the track. I start in the beginning of my career. I was riding on the track in Brussels, and I think that's the best school for young riders to ride on the track, because you learn the most if you ride the track, and that's for me the most important thing if you want to be a good rider.
And Eddy was just as good on the track as he was on the road.
Yeah.
Him and Patrick were the best team ever, you know.
Yeah.
I think.
It was nice to. We were competitors in the beginning, and then after I ride together with him 6 days, and it was. I think we were a good team.
I think you're a very good team. You?
I did kind of the same school. I think I was on the track, cyclocross, mountain bike racing. I went through that school. I mean, I learned from Urs Freuler. I learned on the track, and Dilbundi, that was world champion, and we had this 1 kilometer test, I remember, and with normal, regular bikes. I mean, track bikes, but nothing fancy. And I was already at that time. I was not so bad. The 1 kilometer and 106, 107 wasn't bad, but I mean, it was a great school, and I think this is what also was important for later on, some certain bike skills, if it goes to downhill or how you ride in a group. That was.
Track is the most.
On the track, on cyclocross, I mean, was regional champion in my home region. Instead of doing a half an hour, we had to do 45 minutes. And even we had a 1 minute gap ahead to go on, but still, I mean, it was great. I mean, as a young one, you learn, and as more older you get, as less. I mean, if Alex Zülle will do that in his early years, then probably he will not always crash in the years with Once. Sorry, Alex, but that's the truth. I mean, he said it by himself. He was so bad on his skills when it came to rain and when it came just to downhill, and that's why I think. As larger you do in the early times, those differences, as better you will get.
This is the last question from the young man down there who smiled when you swore, Bradley. I saw it.
First of all, I just want to say all 4 of you on stage were an inspiration. And then to Eddy, my question would be, what would, if you could pick one stage out of your whole career, what would be the highlight?
What was your favourite stage in your whole career, or maybe even a one-day race? Just what were your one day? What was your favourite day on a bike?
One
Racing.
stage in
Or one-day race?
yeah, I think the Trecime Lavaredo was a wonderful climb. It was a break with 8 minutes, and I catch the last rider on 1 kilometer before the finish, and I think that day also I won the Giro. I think
In the snow, wasn't it? In the snow.
Yeah, rain, snow.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, that was
And it's-
Trecime Lavaredo. The other, like the stage to Morange Nouvelle, that I did 120 kilometers in the yellow jersey. I was stupid, but yeah, that was.
Well, look, just put your hands together for these guys. Just fantastic. Obviously available in all good bookstores and online as well, I believe, Bradley. Is that right?
Certainly is, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it might be.
No, thank you everyone for coming as well, because I don't
Yeah.
think, I've said a few times today in interviews, it's an absolute pleasure now to sit and be able to talk about cycling, something you love. So thank you very much for listening anyway. It was worthwhile.
Okay.